promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar and Accra, 1 p.m. in Abuja. Good afternoon, and thank you for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world at wadr.org. This is Newslink. Here are the top stories. Police in Benin detain ex-president's son Chabiayi amid post-coup crackdown. ECOWAS endorses Ghana's President Mahama as West Africa's sole candidate for the African Union chairmanship in 2027.
President Mahama deserves this community support. That's one thing. We all know the competence of President Mahama.
Opposition leaders in Nigeria warn of a plot to undermine the country's multi-party democracy, and protests erupt in Liberia's capital over suspicious death, gridlocking a key highway in the capital.
Since Wednesday, the police have not done anything. These things jurors told us that they were mounted by the police. They told us that nothing wrong with the party. There was no foul play. When we get the woman to a hug, we saw foul play. Then how can we trust them again?
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Abdullahi Hassan with Newslink.
Many thanks for staying with us. Newslink begins in Benin, where Chabiayi, son of former President Yayi Boni, has been placed in police custody after being arrested at his home in the early hours of Sunday. Authorities have not disclosed the reasons for his arrest. Chabiayi also serves as the National Secretary of External Relations of the opposition party, the Democrats. His detention comes exactly 1 week after the failed military coup attempt in the country. Details in this report with Imoradet.
Security tensions continue to rise in Benin following last week's failed military coup. At about 2 a.m. on Sunday, men in military uniforms surrounded the residence of Chabi George's Najem Yayi before arresting him. A search of the property immediately followed. Chabi Yayi, who serves as the National Secretary for External Relations of the opposition party, the Democrats, was taken to the headquarters of the Judicial Police in Cotonou, where his lawyers joined him later in the day for questioning. For now, officials have provided no explanation for his arrest. The opposition has reacted sharply. In a statement, the Democrats described the arrest as an abduction and demanded his immediate release, alleging political intimidation in the wake of the coup attempt. His attention adds to a wave of arrests sweeping across the country. On Friday, another opposition figure, Kandide Azanai, former Minister Delegate for Defense, was also taken into custody. His party, Restore Hope, has since denied reports claiming he has been released. Authorities have additionally issued international arrest warrants, including one for prominent activist Kemi Seba, as the government widens its crackdown linked to the failed coup.
A report by WADR's Cotonou correspondent Aziz Adam Sule and voiced by Imo Redet. The Economic Community of West African State ECOWAS has rejected the transitional charter announced by Guinea-Bissau's military rulers and calls for a rapid return to constitutional order. At the bloc's 68th Ordinary Summit held in Abuja on Sunday, ECOWAS leaders also demanded the immediate release of all political detainees, including opposition figures, and calls for an inclusive and short transition period in Bissau. The regional powerhouse warned that targeted sanctions will be imposed on those obstructing the process. As Francis Boniface reports, regional leaders gathered for the summit on the heels of a recent attempted coup in Benin and diverse challenges confronting the sub-region.
Over the past 5 years, West and Central Africa have witnessed a surge in military coups, with the 9th occurring in Guinea-Bissau on November 26. The trend has deepened concerns about democratic backsliding in a region already strained by persistent insecurity and political instability. Speaking on the subject, Dr. Omar Liu Toure, President of the ECOWAS Commission, reiterated the bloc's zero tolerance for unconstitutional changes of government. He noted that elections held on November 23 in Bissau were judged free and transparent by ECOWAS observers, the African Union, and the Community of Portuguese language countries, and therefore called for a swift return to constitutional rule. ECOWAS chairperson and Sierra Leonean President Julius Maada Bio, already in talks with the junta, warns that failure to comply with the bloc's demands would result in targeted sanctions. Maada Bio, beyond the coups, highlighted critical issues the West African sub-region faces, urging coordinated efforts and swift response.
Terrorist networks continue to exploit fragility and attempt to expand their influence. Our response must therefore be united and uncompromising. Security is not only a military obligation, it is a human imperative, essential for protecting families, livelihoods, and the dignity of our citizens. We must strengthen collective action to ease the movement of our people, deepen regional trade, stimulate tourism, and strengthen the social and economic ties that define our community.
Political instability and rising insecurity dominated discussions at the 68th Ordinary Session of the ECOWAS Heads of State and Government.
Francis Boniface reporting. Meanwhile, the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government has unanimously endorsed Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama as West Africa's sole candidate for the African Union chairmanship in 2027. The approval follows an earlier unanimous recommendation by the bloc's foreign affairs ministers at a summit in Abuja, Nigeria. ECOWAS says the decision reflects strong confidence in President Mahama's diplomatic experience, particularly his roles in mediation, peace-building, and regional integration. President of the ECOWAS Commission, Dr. Omar Aliyu Toure, addressed journalists after the summit at the presidential villa in Abuja.
The authority has also decided to support Ghana's candidature for the chairmanship of the African Union for the year 2027. President Mahama deserves this community support. That's one thing. We all know the competence of President Mahama, and the leaders have full confidence in him to represent West Africa at that in that role.
President of the ECOWAS Commission, Dr. Omar Aliyu Toure. Meanwhile, it is worth noting that Senegal has been selected to take over the reign of the presidency of the ECOWAS Commission from 2026 to 2030.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
We are streaming live at wadr.org. Opposition political leaders in Nigeria have raised fresh concerns over what they describe as growing threats to the country's multi-party democracy, accusing the administration of President Bola Tinubu of weaponizing state institutions to intimidate and weaken opposition forces. In a joint statement issued on Sunday, the leaders warned that the trend, if unchecked, could destabilize Nigeria's democratic system and deepen public distrust ahead of the 2027 general elections. From Abuja, Usman Umar reports.
In a strongly worded press statement on Sunday, the leaders accused the federal government of using agencies such as the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, the police, and the Independent Corrupt Practices Commission to selectively target opposition figures, while alleged infractions involving members of the ruling party are, in their view, ignored or treated with leniency. They warned that recent defections of opposition governors to the ruling party have heightened public suspicion that anti-corruption investigations are being used as tools of political pressure rather than instruments of accountability. The opposition figures argued that such practices undermine public confidence in the fight against corruption and pose a direct threat to democratic pluralism, particularly at a time of growing social and economic discontent across the country. As part of their demands, the leaders called for the immediate depoliticization of the EFCC and returned to what they described as its statutory mandate of impartial prevention and prosecution of economic crimes. They also proposed embedding anti-graft operatives directly into government payment and expenditure processes at federal, state and local government levels as a preventive measure against corruption. In addition, the group demanded the establishment of an independent review body to examine public accounts of all tiers of government from 2015 to 2025, insisting that such a process would expose selective prosecution and strengthen institutional transparency. Signed by former Senate President David Mark, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, Peter Obi, Bode George, and other senior political figures, the statement calls on Nigerians and the international community to remain vigilant in defense of democracy. The opposition leaders warned that silencing dissent and weakening opposition parties could push the country towards a de facto one-party state, a development they say will be dangerous for Nigeria and the wider West African sub-region. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
Away from Nigeria, traffic on the Monrovia-Gbanga Highway was brought to a standstill in Liberia on Sunday as residents staged a protest demanding a thorough and impartial investigation into the death of a woman identified as Keita Jackson. The protesters alleged foul play in Jackson's demise, which has ignited tensions over ritualistic killings and perceived inadequacies in local law enforcement. The demonstration, which lasted for several hours, involved the erection of roadblocks, effectively disrupting travel and commerce in the area. Protesters are calling for an independent inquiry to identify and prosecute those responsible for Jackson's death. WADR's Monrovia correspondent Abraham Parker has more.
Family members report that Jackson disappeared on Wednesday night, only to be found dead in a nearby bush at the weekend. Their suspicions were further intensified by a preliminary investigation conducted by a 15-member jury, which they claim lacked independence and objectivity due to the alleged collusion with the police. Junior Joker, a relative of the deceased, asserted that their relative body had been desecrated with parts removed, suggesting a possible ritualistic motive.
They think that from us to go on the road is because we have been misled. Since Wednesday, the police have not done anything. These things jurors told us that they were mounted by the police. They told us that nothing wrong with the party. There was no foul play. When we gave the woman to a hug, we saw foul play. Then how can we trust them again?
The police commander of the Bon County Detachment, Fasu Sharif, under mounting pressure from the community, has pledged to launch a new investigation aimed at delivering justice to the family.
And let me inform you, this administration will not stay aside to see family going agree and action is not taken. Our responsibility is to protect life and property. We will not stay here to see one person's life going without investigating. With the dissatisfaction you have and telling us that the report from the 15-man coroner jury, you are not satisfied with it, to open another fresh investigation.
This incident underscores a long-standing issue in rural Liberia, where communities have suffered with persistent concerns over ritualistic killings and a perceived lack of accountability. This case is merely the latest in a series of such incidents that have caused distrust and unrest in the region. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
Well, before the break, let's take you to Niger, where the government is strengthening its partnership with the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, to sustainably support rural communities. Over the weekend, Prime Minister Ali Mohamed Lamine Zein signed a financing agreement worth more than 1 billion CFA francs to launch a new agricultural project targeting the regions of Dosso and Tilaberi. Augustine Kole reports.
This new agricultural initiative aims to provide long-term support to Niger's rural sector. It is funded with more than 1.5 billion CFA francs by the FAO for a period of 3 years. Here is Al Hassan Sisse, FAO resident representative in Niger.
As part of the project implementation, the FAO will support the Moribin Federation in carrying out the activities. The Federation will mobilize 8 unions in the Dosso and Tilaberi regions to drive this ambitious initiative, which focuses on empowering producers and building inclusive value chains.
Prime Minister Ali Mohamed Lamine Zein praised the excellent cooperation between Niger and the FAO, as well as with the wider United Nations system. He emphasized that the funds mobilized will go directly to farmers in the project's target areas at a time when agriculture remains a central pillar of the national economy.
We must give our agriculture, which accounts for 40% of our national wealth and GDP, the best possible prospects. We can only commend the efforts of your institution, which works in line with our priorities and also supports your own strategic goals. I hope this strong cooperation will be further strengthened and that with proper follow-up, we will soon see its impact on our communities.
Aligned with national priorities and the FAO's strategy, the project is expected to improve agricultural production, nutrition, the environment, and more broadly, the living conditions of the rural communities concerned.
A report by WADR's Niamey correspondent Murtala Zeberu and voiced in our studios by Augustine Colley. You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM Dakar, Senegal, and live online at wadr.org. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Police in Benin detain ex-president's son Chabiyayi amid post-coup crackdown. ECOWAS endorses Ghana's President Mahama as West Africa's sole candidate for the African Union chairmanship in 2027. Opposition leaders in Nigeria warn of a plot to undermine the country's multi-party democracy, and protests erupt in Liberia over suspicious death gridlocking key highway in the country. Still ahead in the news, we have the guest interview, a press review, and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Many thanks for staying with us. In Burkina Faso, it has been 27 years now since investigative journalist Norbert Zongo was assassinated, yet his killers remain at large. On Saturday, December 13, a coalition of civil society organizations lit a riot at his grave, renewing calls for justice. Emotions were still palpable at the Goyen Municipal Cemetery in Ouagadougou, the nation's capital, where family members, colleagues, and media professionals and civil society groups gathered, as they have every December 13 since 1998. By placing a wreath at Zongo's graveside, they demanded progress on a case that has stalled for more than a quarter of a century. Relatives and supporters insist they will continue to push for accountability despite the prolonged judicial delays. Francois Compaoré, younger brother of former President Blaise Compaoré, is widely cited as alleged mastermind of the killing. Arrested in France in 2017 under international arrest warrant, his extradition to Burkina Faso remains unresolved. Still on the safety of journalists amid rising threats to media professionals globally, stakeholders have urged journalists to remain resilient and highly professional in their line of duty to strengthen democracy and promote social good in the sub-region. Speaking at the 8th edition of EGICOM Journalism Awards in Dakar, Senegal, Dr. Umar Njai, director of media of the institution, challenged young practitioners to be inspired by ethics and code of conduct while calling for the protection and safety of journalists in their line of duty. Christopher Ticho was at the awards night and filed in this report.
The 8th edition of the EGICOM Journalism Awards saw media professionals from across radio, television, online and print media honored for their hard work and producing stories of social impact in areas of human rights, gender, environment, among others. The awards, established in 2018 by the Higher School of Journalism, Internet and Communication Professionals EGICOM, aim to improve the quality of journalism through healthy competition while promoting emerging journalists in Senegal. Speaking to WADR, Dr. Umar Njai, director of EGICOM Media, together with other stakeholders, urged journalists to remain resilient and uphold professionalism despite growing pressure and restrictions on the media. They also called for stronger protection of journalists in the line of duty.
If you understand the society, you know that the journalists have played a big role into the construction of a democratic society. And it's important for the young people to see that into their production, to know that whenever they produce a piece, whenever they release an information, it's not just I am releasing an information because I am able to, but I am also contributing to the betterment of the society.
We need protection. We really need to reformat and rebuild and reimagine the overall, let's say, way we are contributing and we are doing our job as journalists.
The highlight of the night saw Mustafa Tumbo emerge as the 2025 Grand Prize winner after picking up 2 awards. He says the recognition comes with a greater sense of responsibility.
Yes, it's true that this kind of award can push us to do more because now we have a duty to deliver quality productions in the future.
Since its inception, the AGECOM Awards have received over 600 applications and honored 73 journalists over 8 editions.
Christopher Teacher with that report.
This is the Newspaper Review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the Newspaper Review.
The Newspaper Review.
For today's press review, WADR's Usman Umar in Abuja takes us through the front pages for daily headlines.
Today we take a look at key stories making headlines across Nigeria and the West African sub-region, as reported by Daily Trust and The Punch newspapers. We begin with developments from Abuja, where West African leaders gathered for the 69th ECOWAS Heads of State and Government meeting at a time of mounting political and security challenges across the region. According to Daily Trust newspapers, leaders at the summit reaffirmed ECOWAS' zero-tolerance stance on coups and unconstitutional changes of government. The meeting focused on strengthening collective action to halt the spread of military takeovers, particularly in the Sahel, and restoring confidence in democratic governance. Leaders also discussed regional security cooperation and economic recovery, warning that instability in one country poses risks to the entire sub-region. Staying with the summit, The Punch reports that Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu called for unity among ECOWAS member states, urging leaders to confront coups, violent extremism, and transnational insecurity together. President Tinubu stressed that West Africa's future depends on collective resolve, dialogue, and respect for democratic principles, noting that no country can tackle these challenges in isolation. The regional bloc also took a firmer position on Guinea-Bissau. The Punch reports that ECOWAS has resolved to impose targeted sanctions on individuals undermining constitutional order while demanding a speedy return to democratic governance. The decision signals ECOWAS' renewed determination to enforce its protocols and deter future disruptions to democratic rule. Now, from regional politics, we return briefly to economy at home. Daily Trust reports that Nigeria's popular end-of-the-year festive season, popularly known as Dirty December, may not deliver its usual economic boost. Tourism and entertainment operators say rising costs, inflation, and weak consumer spending are threatening revenues during what is traditionally a peak business period. The development reflects wider economic pressures facing households and businesses across the region. Taken together, today's headlines paints a picture of a region at a crossroads, grappling with democratic backsliding, insecurity, and economic strain, while seeking collective solutions through regional cooperation. That's the press review as I hand you back to the studio.
Many thanks, Usman Umar.
Politics,
Analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
West African civil society has reacted following the conclusion of the ECOWAS summit on Sunday, welcomed the sub-regional organization's position calling for a swift return to constitutional order in Guinea-Bissau. The civil society organizations are urging the military authorities in power to cooperate with ECOWAS to ensure a rapid restoration of constitutional order, notably through the immediate publication of the results of the November 23 elections. Our guest, Alesseni Farenta Kamara, coordinator of the NGO Thunder Page Guinea and a member of the collective of West African civil society organizations, underscores the importance of...
Listen, the position taken by the Conference of Heads of State and Government of ECOWAS at its 68th session is fully in line with the approach of West African civil society. In the declaration we issued on December 13, we stated that any hypothesis of a military transition must be ruled out. Indeed, the Bissau-Guinean military authorities must work to ensure that the electoral process is concluded, particularly by publishing the result of the elections held on November 23. This perfectly reflects the deep and legitimate concerns and aspirations of the people of Guinea-Bissau, so that the country can experience its first peaceful, democratic alternation. We welcome this conclusion, and we will all join hands to ensure that the results are published, because The people of Guinea-Bissau must be supported. It should be recalled that the United Nations consider Guinea-Bissau a narco state. We believe that this first alternation would be a guarantee of credible and, above all, legitimacy for the authorities, allowing reforms to be undertaken so that the people can achieve development.
Why do you consider the situation in Guinea-Bissau to be a conspiracy rather than a coup?
It must be acknowledged that what happened in this country cannot be described as a coup d'etat. It is a state conspiracy allegedly orchestrated by Umaru Sissoko Embalo. As a West African civil society organization and movement, we denounce this cynical deceit by the outgoing president carried out in collusion with the armed forces to commit serious abuses.
The military authorities in Guinea-Bissau claim that the presidential election results reports are no longer available at the National Electoral Commission. Do you accept this claim?
Absolument pas. Ce sont des contre-vérités soutenues d'ailleurs.
Absolutely not. These are falsehoods supported by the public prosecutor in Bissau, who was recently appointed precisely to give legal cover to the military authorities. We recall that even if some copies of the polling station's reports were destroyed at the National Electoral Commission, authentic copies are still in other institutions, particularly the regional electoral commissions and local administrations. These bodies hold the same documents as the National Electoral Commission, and their copies can legally be used to proclaim the results as clearly stipulated by Bissau-Guinean electoral law.
Stipulé par la loi électorale bissau-guinéenne.
Senegal has been appointed to lead the ECOWAS Commission, replacing Gambian Omar Touré. What are your expectations regarding the Guinea-Bissau crisis?
Nous saluons l'élection du Sénégal au poste du président de la commission de la CEDEAO pour la période 2000.
We welcome Senegalese election to the presidency of ECOWAS Commission for the 2026-2030 term, and we urge the Senegalese president to listen attentively to the legitimate concerns and aspirations of the people of Guinea-Bissau, who are demanding the immediate publication of the result of the November 23 votes.
Afin que le président démocratiquement élu soit investi dans ses fonctions.
Alciani Farenta Kamara is coordinator of the NGO Turn to Page Guinea. In the sporting world, Ghana's Black Stars will take on Germany International friendly next year ahead of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. The match will take place in Stuttgart, which will take place in Stuttgart, is part of preparations for the global showpiece slated to begin on June 11 in Mexico, Canada, and the United States. Ghana will face England, Croatia, and Panama in Group L. The game, which is the first confirmed pre-World Cup match by the Ghana Football Federation (GFA), will allow coach Otto Addo to sharpen his squad ahead of the tournament. The Black Stars have faced Germany 3 times in all competitions, recording 2 defeats and 1 draw. Meanwhile, coach of Mali's national team, Tom Stanfeld, has named a 28-man squad for the 2025 Total Energies CAF Africa Cup of Nations, recalling long-term absentee Bissoma as the Eagles prepare for a challenging group stage campaign in Morocco. The Tottenham Hotspur midfielder has not featured for his club since this season after being sidelined by injury. But Stanfeld has opted to include a 29-year-old, underlining the importance to Mali's midfield ahead of the tournament, which begins on 21 December. And with that, we come to the end of this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Falili Su and Mustafa Sek for the technical support. Do interact with us via social media platforms X, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at WADR English. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is a repeat broadcast of our flagship health program, Well Body, with Imo Edet, and at the top of the hour of 1 p.m. is the second edition of our comprehensive news packet in French, Info Chez Vous, with Alpha Abubakar. I'm Abdullahi Hassan. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County.
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Baf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone in Nigeria, and Love 104.5 FM, Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinions.